Bob Schieffer, welcome.
Thank you.
Over the years, you've been doing this a lot of years, hasn't it become harder to knock politicians off their scripted talking points?
Well, it's everybody is much more sophisticated now in the information management, not just in politics, but in business, in sports. I mean, the first thing they do with these kids when they qualify for the PGA Golf Tour, they put them into media training and teach them all the things to say. But the politician's role is to deliver a message. Our job is to get to the truth as best we can, and we have two different assignments. And so I think it's just part of the game, but yeah, it is harder.
I was at a Face the Nation anniversary party for you, and I was really struck because Joe Biden and John McCain, from opposite sides of the spectrum, both came and sang your praises. But you have known everybody in this town for decades. But the younger generation, part of the rap is, well, maybe you guys were too cozy with the politicians.
Well, the thing now is nobody in this town knows anybody anymore. The politicians don't know each other anymore. They're only here for a couple of days a week, and then they're back home raising money. I think it's better for everybody if you know who's who. I think every debate, if it's a debate between two people who know one another, I think it's a totally different conversation than if it's two strangers debating, and all too often that's what happens here. I think it was better in the days when people kind of knew one another. Yeah, there were these charges about being too cozy, but it seemed to me the town worked a lot better in those days. I don't think anybody would argue with that.
Many people in this country, as you know, think the three broadcast networks are too biased, too liberal. Would you agree, looking back, that the media gave Barack Obama an incredibly easy ride in 2008 and for much of his presidency?
Well, I think the whole political world was struck by this fellow who sort of came out of nowhere with this very unusual name. And when he won out in Iowa, I think people sat up and took notice.
But isn't it the job of journalists to be skeptical even of the young phenom?
Yeah, it is. It is. And I don't know, maybe we were not skeptical enough. It was a campaign. Howie, my feeling is it is the role of the opponents to make the campaign. I think as journalists, basically what we do is watch the campaign and we report what the two sides are doing. I think it is the politicians who make the campaign. And
but don't journalists have an adversarial role to play when you have a presidential candidate in the chair facing you?
Sure.
You want to be tough on that person.
Well, I think you want to get at the truth. What you're trying to do is find out who this person is and what he's about. I don't think that always has to be adversarial. When I moderated presidential debates, I thought it was my job to try to present a complete picture of the person. But I thought the greatest responsibility was the other person who's challenging that person. That's what the debate is about. And if you have two candidates, one says something and the other one doesn't challenge him, then maybe the moderator comes in and challenges. But I think you have to give the first opportunity to the opponent.
You took over as the CBS Evening News anchor after Dan Rather was forced out over the scandal about George W. Bush and the National Guard. You were supposed to stay a little while. You ended up staying a year and a half. Was that a tough spot for you, coming in at a time when CBS's reputation had really been battered by what happened?
Yeah, it was, but maybe I didn't know it at the time. When they call me, they just called me one morning and said, go up to New York, we need you to do the evening news. And I got to New York and they were all in meetings and I couldn't figure out who had called me. And then I stayed for a week and then they said, we need you another week. And then it became 6 weeks and it actually wound up to be nearly 2 years I was there. But CBS was in a tough place at that point, and
it had to be awkward
Dan
for you.
had always been a friend of mine.
And you two were from Texas. You've known him for years and years.
So that was difficult. But they needed somebody to do the evening news, and they needed somebody to get things back on course. And they said, "You're the one we've chosen to do that." And of course, I had a whole lot of help in doing it. But I also had a great time doing it. It was one of the great experiences of my life because, it was basically the one job at CBS that I'd never had.
But which earlier in your career you had aspired to.
Yeah, I guess everybody does. I mean, it's like every grandmother wants their grandson to grow up to be president. I guess when you come to work at CBS, someday you hope to be the anchor.
Right.
And so it was, I really, really enjoyed it. And it was just fun to be there and see the news organization kind of from that position, which I'd never seen before. And things worked out all right. I'm very proud of it.
I know you're very competitive, so when one of your Sunday rivals, George Stephanopoulos, gets in trouble for not disclosing donations to the Clinton Foundation, does part of you think, well, this will really help us?
No, I don't think of it that way. I don't think of it that way at all. And I'll tell you something, Howie, I've kind of made a practice not to ever comment on what my competitors do. And I feel the same way about that situation. I don't know what that's about, and it requires no comment from me.
What about the trends as somebody who, your first job in journalism was at a radio station?
Yeah, when I was in college,
right.
And then I was a newspaper reporter.
A newspaper reporter. So you spent your whole career in the news business. What about the trend toward politicians making the transition to become journalists or commentators or even anchors?
Oh, you can get to journalism in many different ways. Mike Wallace was a game show host and turned out to be one of the great questioners of all time.
He did all right.
Tim Russert was a political aide, and he turned out to be a terrific moderator of Meet the Press. I learned a lot from him while he was there.
While you two were trying to beat each other.
We tried to beat each other's brains out, and we maintained a really good friendship. And I'll tell you, it's kind of like in sports. Sure, you want to hit a home run, but when you hit a home run off the best pitcher in the league, you feel a little extra. And when I'd beat old Tim, I felt like I'd really done something. And I guess Tim felt the same way. But we off camera, we were very good friends. We had seats next to one another at the Nationals games for many years. I got to know his son, who's a great kid and is becoming a fine journalist.
Luke Russert, yeah.
I have always had great respect for my competitors. I mean, you can't be a dodo and kind of get to this level.
Yeah.
And
but as you
they're
know,
all good.
As you know, some critics say the Sunday shows are not as important as they used to be in an age when politicians are interviewed on cable channels around the clock, when they can put their own videos online. Is there some truth to that?
Well, we still get about 3.5 million people every Sunday, and that's a pretty good size crowd. And I think the reason people watch the Sunday shows, I think the Sunday shows are special. I think the talking heads on Sunday morning are different than in some other hours of the day, because all of those shows are about trying to move the story forward. They're news-driven, information-driven. They're not about anchor antics. They're not about showing off. They're not about
There's no
gotcha
cooking
questions. Yeah, we don't have a cooking segment. And I think there's still a need for that. I think the reason that people watch any news program is because they want information that they think they need. And I think that's what draws people to a news program. If they don't think they need to know something, they're going to watch an entertainment show or something else.
The great commodity in television is youth. And you've been pretty successful at Face the Nation, and you're 78. What possibly explains this?
Well, I don't know. I think I've just been here for a while, and I think there's some value in that. Maybe I don't scare people.
Avuncular is often
Maybe
the word.
I do.
And finally, Bob, now that you're stepping away from CBS, will you be back on television? Will we continue to see you in a journalistic role?
I don't know what I'm going to do, Howie. I would never work any place but CBS. I mean, I have no interest in a, quote, television career, as it were.
You could be a color commentator
but
on
I'm
ESPN.
going to, well, there is that. I'm going to take 3 months off this summer and really think about what I want to do in the next chapter here. I've never had any problem filling my day, and I don't think I will in the future, but I am just so, it's a cliche to say blessed, but I feel so lucky that, when I was a little boy, I wanted to be a reporter. That's what I wanted to be from the 8th grade. And I grew up and got to do that. And I think a lot of people don't have that opportunity. And if my life ended tomorrow, I wouldn't feel shortchanged. I don't know how I could have had more fun and gotten to do more things than I was able to do. So I'm a lucky guy.
Bob Schieffer, thanks very much for sitting down with us here at CBS.
Thanks, Howie.